Alright, g'day there. Richard Musgrave-Evans here again, and welcome back. Now today, Outback Australia, but I've got the beautiful shade of the massive gum trees around me. And that will be today's subject, this big gum tree just here behind me. Got the shade, we've got a dry creek bed. So what happens with these creeks is, most of the year they're dry, and because the ground's so compacted and hard and dry, when it does rain, it doesn't soak in that well, so then you get a big run instead of a soak in. Runs into all the creeks out of the ranges and then floods through, and you can get flash floods, so it comes in hard. But there hasn't been any rain for ages and it's not going to be, so I'm pretty safe here, so there's no worries. Alright, now today, as usual, I'm going to be painting with palette knives and clear prime Belgian linen, so it's got a sealer on it, okay, and tons of oil paint, of course. Now I've just blocked in with a bit of light blue to get me started, and now what I'll do is work out the rest of it. Usually the biggest differences, and it's not always the same. Sometimes I'll start with the darkest darks, sometimes I'll start with the sky. It depends, because I'm painting quickly on site, it depends what needs the most work right from the word go to help the picture, or to help this two-dimensional surface look as much like that as quickly as possible. Alright, let's have a look. Okay, biggest difference, I think I'll start with a few darks in this particular piece. Right, there's plenty of dark at the base of that tree, so alizarin crimson and burnt sienna with a bit of ultramarine blue will really knock it back a ton. Beautiful dark accents, ultramarine blues, varying what I'm putting in here. Some of it's ultramarine blue on the canvas first, some of it is burnt sienna first, and some's alizarin crimson. Just get those darks established where I want them. Okay, just feeling the composition. Put a few darks up here. A few darks there. Just going by feel, really, going by feel. Now yellow ochre and viridian green with some burnt sienna. Just going to paint some of the darks in the foliage itself. There's a little bit there. Just put it where you want it. You want to compose the picture, so the shot out there is never going to be absolutely perfect. I'm getting an idea from what's out there. And if I move a couple of degrees this way or a couple of degrees that way, it all changes anyway. So I'm happy to just get the composition to balance. When you work from a photo, it's too easy to get bogged down with exactly what's in that photograph. And the thing is, if you move a little bit when you take the photo, it's a completely different shot anyway, so why be so stuck on one fixed composition? If I stand back over here, I've got a different composition when I'm viewing that than if I stand over here, so you know. Okay, now magenta. Got some old paint here. I'm sitting on the palette here, just leftovers from the last painting. I'll use a bit of that. I've knocked a bit of magenta to take it back a bit. A little bit of blue with that. Just trying to recede some of that foliage colour here, because those trees are obviously further away. Just get some of the shadows, the feeling of shadows, ultramarine blues and magentas, and a whole array of other things, but mainly that. Ultramarine blue and magenta, a little bit of this to lighten it. Now obviously, a bit of burnt sienna here, more earthy. I like to get the darks in first. Bit of yellow ochre with that. But you can easily go over the darks with oil paint, so that's the idea of putting the darks in first. It's easier to work light over dark, even though you can do the opposite, and that's fine too. Right. You probably think, what is going on here? That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Okay. What's the next biggest difference? Now, that trunk is the raw linen, so I might just leave that for now. The blue sky is the biggest difference at the moment, because that's kind of like the colour of the trunk anyway, so I won't touch that yet. I'll go for the biggest difference, which is that. All right. Right, now unfortunately there's a little bit of light, the sun's up there and it's shining a bit into the camera and just flickering in the lens a little bit. I've tried all sorts of things, not a lot I can do at the moment. So, right, yellow ochre, you'll just have to bear with me. Burnt sienna, white, just mixing up a nice ochre colour, so I've got burnt sienna, white, yellow ochre. Nice light tone. I'll just leave that there for a minute. Now I'll go for some ultramarine blue and white. See what we've got here. Ultramarine blue. Half mix it with those ochres. See, I'm pulling it across because there's a lot of that ochre in the sky today, so by mixing the two next to each other and half mixing them into each other, you get that kind of mediocre blend where it's kind of yellowy ochre, kind of blue at the same time. Just lighten it with a bit more yellow ochre over here and white. Mix that into the brew. Oh, look at that, lovely stuff. Painting between the negative spaces there, all the stuff in between the shadows. It's always fun to rip into a big canvas. Really love it. As you've probably learned by now. I'm kind of filling in those spaces, as you can see. Right, a bit more blue, ultramarine blue and white. So it's slightly darker. Slightly more blue, there's less of the ochres involved. Let's have a look. A bit darker than that. So it's got a bit more blue, obviously. There's a bit of a jump there, but that doesn't matter between the two. Just in here, I can blend them pretty easily, so it's no dramas. Okay. There we go, that's pretty good. Now, more blue with a bit of magenta. It's getting a bit more red as we go up, a little bit more red. The sky tends to do that as it gets higher. What do we got? These are not quite as red as that, so I've just grabbed a little bit of blue but also a bit of white to lighten it back. those. Getting there, getting there. Oh, what fun. Right, for the very top I think I'll go a bit darker again. A bit more ultramarine, a bit more red. Let's have a look. What do we got? Yeah, that's blue alright. That's blue. That's what I was after. Nice and deep. There's that trunk going on. It goes up there and up there. Trying to work out my composition. Okay. Right, now let's have a look. I might just do a little bit of blending to blend those colours so they're not looking at each other completely. Pull them into each other. Get those ochres coming into the rest of the blue. Might mix up some sort of soil colour, so we use the yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna. It's got a bit more red. We'll go for a bit of alizarin crimson and yellow ochre. Let's just have a look at this. What do we got? It's a nice rich colour. So that was yellow ochre and alizarin crimson with a bit of burnt sienna maybe. You can see what I'm up to here. Starting to put in a beautiful bank. It's all starting to come together. Filling up in between all these gaps and negative spaces. Yeah, right. Now, what are we still going? Yep. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre. I just want to paint a bit of a shadow tone over here of the bank as it recedes off into the distance there. I want to go a bit lighter, so I use a bit of cad yellow deep with the mix, which will lighten the tone a bit. Lighten the tone a lot. Bit of red with it. It's a bit too green looking. Some of the blue got mixed in. Right, just pull that through like so. Trying to block in these tones. Hang on, bit of magenta, bit of these colours. Just going to knock up a bit of a grey here, dusty mauve sort of colour. Half mix that with these to give me the beautiful colours of the creek bed rubble that I'm standing on. Let's pile that in. Bit deeper in tone, hang on, bit of burnt sienna. And magenta. Just trying to make a lower key colour down here so your eyes are drawn away from it. Don't tend to look there so much. Deepening the tones, random the marks, right. Yeah, what do we got here? Start to put some of the, with that same colour, which is a nice beautiful colour. It's the colour of the little bits of bark on the trunk there you can see, so I'll just put some of that in. Beautiful stuff. Fantastic, a little bit more red in it. There's a lot of variety, so I'm just varying the colours subtly as I go. Yeah, that wind's up and about today. Feels like it's going to get windier. Took the drone for a fly this morning and there was not a breath of wind. It was a perfect day. Went up quite high. When I got a high, I got a warning from my drone that it wanted to come back down because of the high wind. And it's like, high wind? What are you talking about? There's no wind. But obviously up there was a wind that I didn't know about. And I think she's coming now. Right. I'm pretty protected with the plein air trailer though. The plein air trailer is blocking the wind always and the sun. It's fantastic. Alright, what are we doing? Bit of white, bit of yellow ochre, some brown, mixing up a really beautiful light tone of greys. This is going to be this beautiful stuff here. Trying to get the spiral. There's a real pattern in the tree too. I'm trying to pick up on that pattern. This is just the best fun. I love this. When you start to see the picture, you get the groundwork in and then you start to see it forming. It's just like, yes. Yes, fun, fun, fun. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff here. I'll just leave that for now. I'll get back into the biggest differences. Yellow ochre, burnt sienna for the underside where the reflected light is. It's quite a warm tone. There's a bit more red in it. Just under here, let's have a look. It's reflecting from the ground back up. Back up, like so. Beautiful warm tone. Something along those lines. Yep. A lot of varying all the time now and going back to some sort of lighter tone with more yellow ochre. This part up here. We're still working with all the shade mainly at the moment. We haven't hit the direct sunlight much yet. What was that? I just spat a fly out. Ended up in the works. What do you do, eh? The fun and games of plein air painting. Right where that mark was, I'm deciding to make it a branch. So there you go. There's a branch coming down here in yellow ochre. A bit more burnt sienna, warmer tones. Like I said, I'm painting all the shadows at the moment. I'll get into the other stuff in a minute. Just feeling my way. Have I said that already? I think I have. Right. I'll stand back and have a look at that. All right, to really get it to pop, I'm going to stick on some beautiful highlights now, which will be pure white with a little bit of cad yellow deep. Just a little bit here. Let's have a look. Too much cad yellow, so it's more white I want. Feel your way, feel your way. White tones here and there. That looks like it needs it. Light's very random, jumping here and jumping there. Pure white there. Okay, let's have a look at that. You'll see the light of the tree is really starting to pop out now because of that. Now a bit of cad red with the cad yellow to make an orange. Lighten the tone, mix a bit of yellow ochre with it. Trying to get a higher key orange, but not too strong, just somewhere in the middle. Needs a bit more yellow ochre than that. And yellow cads. Deepen it up a bit. Just picking out that bank a bit better with lighter tones. Feeling the chunkiness, the quality of the chunkiness. More magenta in it as it recedes back. It's kind of a duller version, ever so slightly down here. Well, I've got the shadow version of those bits of foliage, now I'll do the light version. Yellow ochre, tiniest bit of viridian green, a little bit of white. Really lighten that tone off. Very warm tone though, just lightly touch. What do we got? A little bit more white. Just feeling it here and there, pulling very lightly so that the shadow tone is actually still coming through. Right. Now with a clean knife, I'm just going to pull through a bit like so, wipe it clean every time, just to, what have we got here? Get the draftsmanship of that. By pulling through, you're just softening the edges a little bit so it's more convincingly fitting into the environment that it's surrounded in. Got to wipe the knife clean every time for that. Thin run. Just here it's too hard to edge, it's a bit unnatural, so pull through. Just soften. Just that little bit, not too much. Take a bit of paint off there to get the draftsmanship of these beautiful trunks and pull through a little bit. pulling the paint up there to get the draftsmanship again. Pulling through and softening. Get the draftsmanship of that by taking a bit of paint off the edge. I just love working with the knife alone, as you know. Fantastic for all this stuff. Now I just pull through there to help soften those too. Makes the tree go around, if you know what I'm saying. Soften some of those shadows, get good variety. Let's have a look what we got. Yep, coming along okay. Now a bit of that blue with that green, I'll just mix up a little bit of a saltbush colour. Burnt sienna, it's kind of a grey green foliage colour. It's just a few saltbush tufts. A little bit more sky blue in that maybe, and yellow ochre to green it ever so slightly. It's fairly brown though because of the drought. It is fairly brown today. I'll go with that. Everything's a bit browner than usual. Just soften again. Lightly soften them off. Okay, now. Bit more magentas, what do we got? Burnt siennas and blues. Stand back and have a look at that. What I'm trying to do there is add the shadows that are on the bank. There's a few more just here. Ultramarine blue, magenta. Quite a cool colour there. That wind is really picking up now. But I think we're all good. Alright, so let's get some better draftsmanship. Might have to put that big knife down, as much as I hate doing that. You know I love the big knife. Alright, let's go for a smaller knife. A little bit of those CAD colours in the whites. Get a few of the highlights. What are we going to do? Knife on the edge. Draw in a few of those beautiful details on the gums. I like to add a bit of the CAD colour with the whites when I'm drawing those highlights, because what it does, it's a really complementary colour of the blue sky and really pops. Sunlight seems to have a general warm feel about it anyway, so we just go with that. Now you've seen me use a rigger before, a rigger brush for this sort of job, but when I'm working direct from the subject I prefer not to. It can get too messy. It's good for home, but when you're doing wet on wet like this, I find it better to just get the knife on the edge and work with that. Just got to work out where I want my highlights to be. Right, let's have a look at that. Just make up a bit of a magenta-y grey type of colour here. Just sting with a little bit of colour. Just drawing in some of the busyness of the foreground. Got the roots of the tree itself going this way and that way. It seems to be working a treat. Stuff, bits of wood, bits of this, bits of that. Little bits of firewood to cook up the lunch. Thin it off. More mauves, blue to make a magenta. Mix it with some of the cads, getting a kind of neutrally dusty colour. Oops, that's too green. Whites and magentas, cads, a bit more magenta with that. There's a bit of magenta in there, what do we got? Just lightly pulling it through to get some of those rocks. See, what you've got is, you've got the red earth of the bank and all that, but you've also got a lot of grey kind of rocks in the creek itself. So I'm joining the two together, and that's those warm and cool contrasts. Make a dark, a warm dark. Knife on the edge. Getting a bit of draftsmanship over here of one of the trees. Just take a bit of paint off there like so with the knife, so I'm pulling a bit of paint back down to get better draftsmanship. Just picking out that. Really starts to come together when you start doing a little bit of fine drawing work with the edge of the knife. Speaking about that, there's a few darks in here that I want to add. I had the lights, trunks, but there's a few darks kicking around too. Get a few brights here with the bigger knife. Just add some light, pick out some of the detail. the edge of the knife. I'm a knife on the edge. Get that. Just pick out a few bits and pieces here and there with the light's catching stuff. Catching the edge of the bank as it runs off. That's looking good. Okay. A bit more there. Mix all that together to get a real highlight. Through there. Great, it's starting to take shape, which is good. Now, a bit of phthalo blue, which is a strong blue, as you know. Mix a really light tone. I've got a lot of warm tones in this trunk. Just want to add a few softer ones. Oh, sorry. I've got a lot of warm tones in the trunk. I want to add a few cooler ones, so I've gone for the blues, pale blues. Just to feel it. Let's have a look. Just to give that warm and cool contrast, as we've talked about before. Really helps the painting come to life when you've got the contrast between the two. Just got to work out where that cool light's going to be. Stand back and have a look. Soften it like that to blend the warm and cool together. That's the beauty of the knife. Always working around, as we've discussed before. Now, pick out some draftsmanship here with the knife. Bits of bark. Feeling the flow of how it's all going here. It's kind of got a spiralling effect. The tree's got a bit of a spiral. So I'm going with that. Just trying to get some character into this tree now. Bit of a cooler tone there with that shadows casting around. I'm picking out the warm and cool colours of the trunk. It's all in front of me, which is good. That's working plein air. It's all around me so I can see what I need to see at the time. Knife on the edge again. Alright, get back again. Alright, so just get a few of these shadow tones and start picking out a little bit more draftsmanship. You don't want to get too carried away, you just want a few fine lines here and there to give the feeling of detail. You can overdo something like this, so it's just the idea of to just have enough. Clean the knife. Just got a bit of these ochres here. Just lightly putting some sunlit leaves, a few highlighty leaves. Have to look at that. Through there. Bit of white and cads just here. Just ever so slightly pick out some highlights very, very subtly. Alright, what do we got? Getting there, getting there. Smearing and softening here and there. Some details. Pretty happy with what's going on. I've got some great subtle colours, warm and cool contrast. I've got the reflected orange light coming out up off the ground. I've got the cool blues in there because it's such a cool coloured tree. It enables me to really play with those warm and cool contrasts in the tree itself. So that's great. Really happy with the energy through here and those warm and cools here. We've got the rocks, which are that kind of purpley grey colour. And then you've got the banks, which are those warm orange. So they're jumping around next to each other. Pretty happy with that. Alright. Alright, well that's about it I reckon. I don't want to wreck it and go too far. I've got the big impression of a beautiful day. And I think I'll leave it at that. What I'll do now is we'll get the camera off and we'll have a close look around and see what you reckon. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be made aware of any of these videos as I upload them. And if you like the video, excuse me, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, spread it around to all your mates, and just spread the good word in general. Flies. Alright, well thanks again for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.